The deep skull is the earliest modern human remain in Southeast Asia. This 40,000-year-old modern skull was found in the deepest trench of Gua Nyah in Sarawak in the late 1950s. After more than 50 years, Malaysia has come a long way in the field of archaeology. Discoveries have shed light on prehistoric life. Who were the stone tool makers of Kota Tampan, and what happened to them during the volcanic eruption that blackened the sky? What was the rare disease that crippled Perak's oldest skeleton? Who were the makers of ancient pottery in Sabah? What happened to the skeletons in Kelantan's largest prehistoric cemetery that vanished without a trace? These are mysteries waiting to be unraveled. Join us now on a quest to seek out Malaysia's astounding prehistoric heritage. The past has always fascinated mankind, luring intrepid explorers to trek across deserts or hack their way through jungle to uncover ancient secrets. Since the early days of exploration, archaeology has become more advanced. Discoveries are profound and significant. In the last 50 years, archaeology has become a major source of information on man's past 2 million years on Earth. In Malaysia, the first forays into early history were led by British pioneers. Gail Siefking was the curator of museums in Malaya when he excavated Gua Cha in 1954. He had found Peninsular Malaysia's largest Neolithic trove of skeletons, jewellery and pottery. 4 years later, Tom Harrison, the curator of Sarawak Museum, made another significant discovery, a 40,000-year-old skull in Gua Nyah. The deep skull is the earliest known record of humans in Malaysia. It placed East Malaysia on the human migration map from Africa to Australia. It was not until the 1970s that a Malaysian archaeologist would make her mark on Gua Nyah. Determined to discover more of Malaysia's prehistory, Professor Zuraina Majid was convinced that early man must have trekked through peninsular Malaysia to reach Australia. But where does one start when looking for a Paleolithic archaeological site?
Having worked at Gua Nyah, a Paleolithic site in Sarawak, I said we must have something in Semenanjung, Malaysia, because it is a land bridge from mainland Southeast Asia to insular Southeast Asia. So what I wanted to do was to find out whether or not we had a Paleolithic site in Lenggong.
For centuries, Lenggong Valley has largely remained undisturbed. Located in the Perak River Basin, the valley comprises 7 limestone complexes covering about 30% of the land surface area.
So I came here to look for the site, and lo and behold, what I got was a lot more.
In 1987, Professor Zuraina stumbled upon one of the most important finds in archaeology, not only for Malaysia, but also for the whole world. She had found a stone tool workshop.
We opened up a few trenches there, and I was very surprised that it was an undisturbed site. Now, an undisturbed site is like jackpot, because it's going to tell you the story. You'll be able to piece together the story. And to get an undisturbed Paleolithic site is rare.
This is also the longest period in which humans evolved from ape-like features to modern man. The Paleolithic age marks the emergence of early man and his fashioning of the first stone tools some 2 million years ago. In Malaysia, it was an era that lasted to about 10,000 years ago.
During Paleolithic times, the culture revolved around stone as the raw material. And the technology for stone tool was the basis of their culture.
Dr. Mokhtar Saidin learnt the art of stone tool making from studying the tools of Kota Tampan. Stone tools were used for a variety of tasks, including cutting open animal carcasses and slicing through muscle. They were also able to smash through bone for its marrow. The stone tools found at Kota Tampan were not as attractive as those found in Africa. Archaeologists consider Southeast Asia as the backwaters of civilization based on the appearance or the morphology of stone tools. Kota Tampan proved them wrong.
We cannot just look at tool morphology, but we have to consider what went on in their minds when they were making the stone tools, how much they knew about what they were doing. They were really pretty advanced. They knew exactly what type of raw material would make sharp stone tools, and they used the best that was around that would give them the sharpest edge. They also flaked it in such a way that they could use it for the tropics. So that really showed that they were very aware of the lithology of stone. They knew their geology. It was as if they had taken Geology 101. You know, of all the stone types available, they had chosen the best.
At Kota Tampan, clusters of stone tools were discovered all over the site, as if different people were sitting around, maybe even at different times, making stone tools by an established method of production that was both systematic and organized. Their workshop was found near a lake.
Many thousand years ago, a lake existed in the Kota Tampan area, and that lake was created by a natural landslide. Many people lived around that lake. You have water, you have protection on one side, you have your fish. It's not a peculiar situation. Everywhere else where you have a lake, you are bound to find old settlements.
How old was the stone tool workshop at Kota Tampan? The Great Toba eruption in Sumatra 74,000 years ago was the largest in the last 2 million years. The eruption produced ash columns of 50 to 80 kilometers high, spreading fine ash to as far away as India. The ash would have severely affected Perak, which is only 250 kilometers away from Lake Toba. The ash cloud caused total darkness for more than 2 weeks, making it difficult for humans to survive. Studies were conducted on ash found between the stone tools at the site.
I saw a speck of grey in this terracotta earth. So I thought maybe it's the Toba ash. So I took a sample, and sure enough, that was a Toba ash. And we found that that ash was found all around the floor of this stone tool workshop. That was really another moment of excitement, because that meant we would not only know the date, but we would also know the cause of abandonment of the site.
News of Professor Zuraina's discovery caused a stir among archaeological circles. More than 20 archaeologists from around the world descended upon Kota Tampan to see for themselves the startling evidence of a Paleolithic site in its original context.
Kota Tampan is one of those places where there are stone tools found, and they're in a very specific context. When I mean context, that means the surrounding material. And in the case of Kota Tampan, the surrounding material was the ash of the Toba volcano. Datuk Zuraina has found stone tools in that region which are associated with the ash, and the dating of the ash is 74,000. And the dating of the tools has also been done by independent means recently, which agrees in general with that 74,000 date. Now this means if those stone tools were made by modern humans, then modern humans were present in Southeast Asia before 74,000 years ago.
With the dating of Kota Tampan, it was now possible to see that anatomically modern humans had settled in peninsular Malaysia en route from Africa to Australia. Peninsular Malaysia had become a crucial chapter in the out-of-Africa exodus, which saw mankind populating the world. Kota Tampan proved a jewel in the crown for Malaysian archaeology, but so much remains unknown about the makers of the stone tools. No human remains were found at the site. Is there more to the mystery of Lenggong Valley? Today, life in Lenggong Valley centres around the town of Lenggong, some 100 kilometres north of Ipoh, on the road from Kuala Kangsar to Grik. Limestone hills sprawl across this lush river valley. Caves provide shelter from the elements or from danger, and it is the obvious place to look for signs of prehistoric habitation. Dr. Mokhtar Saidin from University Science Malaysia mapped out all the limestone caves in the area.
Saya diminta oleh pengarah Datuk Zuraina untuk memetakan semua gua yang ada di Lenggong. Dan saya mengambil masa 1 bulan bersama orang kampung membantu saya, dan kami telah memetakan 72 gua pada 7 bukit batu kapur. Daripada 72 ini pula, kita kena menentukan yang mana paling berpotensi untuk penyelidikan arkeologi. Dan antaranya ialah Gua Gunung Runtuh.
8 kilometres from Kota Tampan, Gua Gunung Runtuh is perched on top of a limestone massif, Bukit Kepala Gajah. Positioned 75 metres above sea level, there are 3 entrances into the cave.
A cave is a natural home for early man. It's got its walls, floor, ceiling, sometimes more than one entrance. In this particular case, it also is air-conditioned. It's rather cool and comfortable, dry and with sufficient light for them to live. When we get to a cave, we do not know exactly where to excavate until we have searched for surface finds. That is an indicator of habitation.
Excavations must be done methodically. The dig is confined within lettered squares, which soon become deep trenches. It is a slow process, using specific tools to carefully uncover the artifacts. In 1990, Professor Zuraina unravelled Gua Gunung Runtuh's astounding secret, a fully intact human skeleton.
We were fortunate that we found a skeleton here, and it's always exciting when you get skeletons because a skeleton holds a lot of secrets to life at that time.
Malaysia's tropical climate hastens organic decay. The skeleton was already brittle and badly broken, so the archaeologists had to work cautiously. The excavation was a highly destructive process. Emphasis was given to precise records of where objects were found and how they were placed in relation to other pieces. Each fragment was identified and carefully cleaned while in place with wooden skewers and soft hair brushes. Fragments were carefully removed and labelled, and attention was given to whether the skeletal parts belonged to the left or right side. The bones were wrapped for added protection and transported to the laboratory at University Science Malaysia for reconstruction.
You know, when you see a skeleton, you really don't know how significant it's going to be until you study it. And the more you study it, the more details you get, and you get stronger evidence. And then when you get the total picture, then that's the exciting moment. That's eureka.
A multidisciplinary approach was used to study the skeleton and other excavated remains in order to extract as much information as possible. Professor Teguh Jacob, Indonesia's foremost paleoanthropologist, based at Gadjah Mada University in Yogyakarta, was invited to shed some light on its identity.
Bones and teeth tell a lot of story about themselves, so that if we can understand the language of the bones, then there are many things I can tell you.
From studying the pelvis, sacrum and the skull, Professor Jacob was certain they had found a male about 1.5 meters tall. As he was found in the state of Perak, he was called the Perak Man. But there was something very odd about him.
When I saw the hand bones, it's something unusual, because you have very short middle phalanx, especially on the left side. So this anomaly is called brachymesophalangia. This anomaly is rather rare, even in living population. In archaeological material, I have never seen one reported.
Perak Man was physically challenged, suffering from a genetic malformation known as brachymesophalangia type A2, the first ever recorded of prehistoric remains.
The arms, the left arms and the left leg are shorter than the right ones, so his gait is a little different.
In our present-day population, only 4 cases of this deformity have been reported worldwide. That wasn't his only problem. He had a curved spine, which suggested he might have been inflicted with cerebral palsy. But despite his disabilities and difficulty in finding food, Perak Man lived till the ripe old age of between 40 to 45 years old, almost twice the lifespan then. The cranial suture closure, the thinning of the scapula, and the degree of tooth wear told us how old he was at death. He lived so long because his everyday needs were taken care of by his community. Being the wisest, they listened to his advice on how to find food and medicine. The incomplete skull of Perak Man offered clues to how he died. To ensure its protection, CT scan data was used to make a replica, which allowed experts to work on the dental and craniofacial structure. It was Professor Abdul Rani Samsudin who figured out what possibly killed Perak Man. Professor Rani from University Science Malaysia's Kelantan campus specializes in cranio-maxillofacial surgery and reconstruction.
When we took the bones through the CT scan, accidentally we found a bone cyst in the right side of the mandible. Right? It's a big cyst. We determined that it is a cyst because it has resorbed the roots of the teeth. The roots of the teeth has been damaged. That cyst could be infected, and that could cause spread of infection throughout the body. I believe that he must have suffered, and that might have been his most probable cause of death.
The Perak man was not just abandoned at death, but was given a burial with certain rituals. The hands placed on the abdomen and shoulder, while the legs were folded up with the knees bent in a fetal position. Stone tools accompanied him on his final journey. Over 2,000 riverine shells, sourced from nearby rivers, were buried with him. Larger shells were placed closest to his body, while smaller ones were scattered in the grave. Animal bones were recovered in his right hand, suggesting he was well looked after, even in his afterlife. More than 5 types of meat, including monkey and monitor lizard, were buried with him. Not only did the burial tell us the diet of the people then, but it also told us the importance of Perak man to the community.
He's treated well, a special method of burial. That means he has a social position at a higher level, you see. Because otherwise you get a common burial for the common people. And then it's only one burial in that cave, so he must be somebody special.
So how long ago was Perak man's death? Radiocarbon dating places the time of burial at 10,000 to 11,000 years ago, making Perak man one of the rarest Paleolithic skeletons found in Southeast Asia. Of what racial stock was Perak man? Could he have been our forefather? And how did he arrive in Lenggong Valley? Professor Stephen Oppenheimer of Oxford University has been using mitochondrial DNA to track the ancient human migration out of Africa. He believes the Australian melanozoids are descendants from Africa and that they are still around today in peninsular Malaysia and further south.
Now, these populations include the Andaman Islanders, who many people say look like Africans, and in Malaysia, the Orang Asli. Now, the Orang Asli means original people, and these are the Aboriginal populations, and there are at least 3 main groups. One of these groups, the Semang, also look quite like Africans. And when we analyze their teeth, the dental record suggests that the Semang are likely to be remnants of that original movement. Now, that implies that the ancestors of the Semang arrived here right after the Out of Africa movement, and they have stayed here ever since. So it's likely that the Semang are the oldest settled inhabitants of the Malay Peninsula.
Perak man still has many stories to tell.
We can't say that we have completed the research on Perak man. As time goes on, there are new methods, new scientific approaches to get more information on the Perak man. In order for it to be able to go through all these new tests that might come later, we preserve him without contaminating him with any chemicals, so that at any time we can use any part of his body.
Lenggong Valley continues to fascinate archaeologists. Stone tools older than those at Kota Tampan have been found in Temelong, Lawin and Bukit Jawa. It was at these open sites that archaeologists turned back Malaysia's prehistorical clock to 200,000 years ago. This was by far Malaysia's oldest settlement.
The Lenggong Valley is the most important valley archaeologically for Malaysia because it was inhabited from very, very early times. It was the earliest, in fact, the earliest habitation area in the whole country, and it continued for a long, long time. Now, the other center of habitation for the country, I think, is East Sabah.
What will the archaeologists find there? Across the South China and Sulu Seas in eastern Sabah lie more mysteries of the past to unravel. University Science Malaysia has dispatched a team of archaeologists to the coastal town of Sempurna. 5 kilometers away is Bukit Tengkorak, an important archaeological site that commands a spectacular view. Dr. Stephen Chia is leading an excavation team with the help of the Department of Sabah Museum. During the Neolithic era, Bukit Tengkorak was a thriving pottery-making site, one of the largest in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. The Neolithic comes after the Paleolithic age and represents a more sophisticated culture. Basic agriculture, pottery, and more developed stone tool technology were introduced. It peaked about 5,000 years ago. Dr. Chia started excavating Bukit Tengkorak in 1994 for his doctorate thesis. Since then, he's been getting a clearer picture of how prehistoric man lived on the Sempurna Peninsula. Raw materials like clay, sand, water and firewood were carried up the hill to replenish the supply of the pottery makers.
We have a lot of pottery shards. So we estimated about more than 6 million shards on this whole hill alone. In terms of its significance and importance to Southeast Asian archaeology, we are talking probably about one of the largest pottery sites in Southeast Asia during the Neolithic period.
The summit of Bukit Tengkorak is the ideal place to fire pottery. Volcanic boulders sheltered the people from the sun and rain while they worked. It also had the perfect wind tunnel.
The uprising breeze from the sea will go through this tunnel here. So it will help in the firing of the pottery. So it will actually blow the fire and make it bigger so that it can bake the pots faster.
The excavation provided a wealth of information.
We found thick layer of ashes, remnants of a pottery kiln. When you fire 20 pots, 1 or 2 will break. Over the years, you tend to accumulate a lot of broken pots.
But who made them and why? For centuries, the Bajau Laut formed an integral part of the coastal society of southeastern Sabah. They were sea nomads, and up to the 1950s, many families were living entirely on boats. Food had to be cooked on a lapohan, or a portable stove. Today, Bajau women still make these stoves that share an uncanny resemblance to shards found at Bukit Tengkorak. The technique used is almost the same. Clay and sea sand are pounded together to form coils to make the stove.
We can see from radiography, parallel lines in the shards, which is evidence of the coiling technique they use. What we have found, based on our studies of the pottery, and what is seen today by the Bajau Laut people who still make pots, the technology is similar. So it shows that this tradition of pottery making has continued from 3,000 years ago until the present day.
The stoves are air-dried for several weeks before firing. These portable stoves once featured prominently in Bajau households to grill fish and cook rice. Professor Zuraina recognizes the importance of Bukit Tengkorak to Malaysia's archaeology. She supervised Dr. Chia's thesis in the mid-1990s.
Drills used for what?
13 years later, Professor Zuraina is still keen to see what Dr. Chia has discovered. Amongst his excavated finds is obsidian, a volcanic glass highly prized as a stone tool.
We try to look for the source of obsidian in this region, in Sempona, but so far we have not found any. We tried fingerprinting it chemically to more than 66 sources that is known in Southeast Asia. We managed to match our obsidian at Tengkorak to the ones in Malaysia, in New Britain.
But how did it get here? Thalassia was over 3,500 kilometers away. With Bukit Tengkorak's strategic seaside location, Dr. Chia believes he has found the longest trading route in the Neolithic world. In Sarawak, the west mouth of Nias Great Cave is one of the most important archaeological sites in Southeast Asia. Over 200 human burials from 40,000 to 1,000 years ago have been excavated. Nearby, the Painted Cave is an impressive collection of hematite paintings dating to about 2,000 years ago. The Neolithic drawings show figures in boats travelling to the land of the dead. Nia continues to attract archaeologists to seek out its secrets. Dr. Stephen Chia is working on a trial trench. After digging less than half a metre, he stumbles on a prehistoric cemetery. The three skeletons, pottery shards and food remains indicate a Neolithic burial. Dr. Chia suspects more skeletons in the vicinity and plans to return for a bigger excavation. There is more to discover in Sabah and Sarawak. Archaeologists continue to find promising new sites to excavate and help unravel the mystery of early man in East Malaysia. Once the skeletons and other excavated finds reach the laboratories, the real detective work can begin. Archaeologists team up with scientists to help decipher the clues.
Right now we are trying to find back the jigsaw puzzle. The pieces of bones that are broken, we try to refit it back together so that we get a complete skeleton.
Meanwhile, the pottery shards have arrived from Bukit Tengkorak. These have to be sorted and categorized with the final goal of assembling a complete pot or vase from the 1,000 possible pieces. Artifacts are returned to museums or kept as a reference collection within Malaysia. But these skulls are at the University of Cambridge in England. How did they get here? The University of Cambridge has a history stretching back 800 years, making it England's second oldest learning institution. Within the university lies Duckworth Laboratory, which is one of the world's biggest depositories of human biological collections.
Duckworth collection is largely a Victorian collection that's comprised of approximately 20,000 human remains. Most of them are skulls. The strength of the collection is that it represents the majority of different populations and peoples of the world. It's one of a few very large collections in Britain, and it was constructed mainly of collections brought back to Britain over 100 years ago.
The Duckworth also houses a collection of skulls from Gua Cha, Kelantan. How did they get here? He was just 30 years old when he died over 5,000 years ago. His grave was discovered in Gua Cha, Kelantan in the mid-1950s. Gail Sievking and his wife Anne discovered Peninsular Malaysia's largest prehistoric cemetery. Over 30 men, women and children were buried at this rock shelter between 10,000 to 2,000 years ago. The way they were buried indicated two separate cultures. Some were found flexed, while others were fully extended with grave goods like jewelry and pottery. The Sievkings took more than 30 skeletons back with them to England. Upon his return, Gale donated the skulls to the Duckworth Laboratory, but he kept the skeletons for himself. Nothing more was heard of the skeletons again. 51 years later, National Heritage Commissioner Professor Zuraina Majid received news from Dr. Ryan Rabbit of the University of Cambridge, England.
A colleague got in touch with me to say that Anne and Gail Sievking wished to have a collection of bones from Gua Cha repatriated to Malaysia. At that time, I didn't know exactly what this involved. I initially thought it was going to be animal remains, which is my speciality. But when I went to collect the material with the Earl of Cranbrook, we quite rapidly realised that in fact these were human remains, and following that the material was stored here at the MacDonald Institute, and I began a dialogue with Professor Zuraina to work out how best to return the material and under what would be the best time to return it and so forth.
It would take Professor Zuraina another 2 years to secure the necessary permits.
We needed to have the agreement of approximately 6 organizations before we could take the skeletons back.
2008, Professor Zuraina Majid has come to the University of Cambridge to oversee the skeleton's safe passage home. The Minister of Culture, Arts and Heritage, Datuk Sri Utama Dr. Rais Yatim, is also here to meet the Vice-Chancellor to finalise the repatriation of the bones. The return of the Gua Cha skeletons is of great archaeological importance to Malaysia.
Dari segi budaya, kita perlu meletakkan penemuan ini di tahap yang merupakan kepentingan nasional. Kita ingin membuat penemuan ini sebagai satu permulaan pengkajian yang serius, dan di samping itu menjadikan manusia Gua Cha ini sebagai satu lambang ancestral ataupun satu lambang asal-usul kemanusiaan di Malaysia, khususnya di Semenanjung.
Although the skeletons are coming home, their skulls will remain in the Duckworth collection indefinitely. The Duckworth has over 9 skulls from Gua Cha in their collection. Skulls are highly prized for the wealth of information it can provide to researchers, such as the person's age, gender, race, and diet. Professor Zuraina has a plan.
So what we could do now is to get replicas made of the few skulls that he had given to Duckworth Laboratory, so that our postcranial parts will be more complete.
After years of not being cared for properly, the bones are extremely fragile. They are packed to prevent further damage. In 2006, Dr. Mokhtar came to Cambridge to do an initial study on the Sieve King collection with Dr. David Bulbeck from the Australian National University and Dr. Ryan Rabbett from the University of Cambridge.
Hasil analisis awal kita menemui daripada 10 kotak ini 22 individu. Separa lengkap, ya, mewakili umur daripada 5 tahun sampai ke 40 tahun. Dan kalau tidak salah saya ada 12 lelaki dan selebihnya perempuan dan juga ada kanak-kanak.
Sieve King had excavated more than 30 skeletons, but only 22 are coming back to Malaysia. The missing skeletons continue to mystify archaeologists. It is time to leave. The 8 suitcases will be hand-carried onto the plane.
They've been here for more than 50 years, and now they've got a return ticket back to Malaysia.
Finally, after more than 5 decades, the largest collection of Neolithic bones from Peninsular Malaysia is going home. It is a giant leap forward for Malaysian archaeology.
Well,
thank you.
Take care.
Thank you at last.
See you soon, I'm
after
sure.
so many emails and after...
Yes, it's been a while.
I would say it's a significant collection, simply because there are few early human remains from anywhere, and certainly not a large number from Southeast Asia, and this is a significant collection from Malaysia. I think that it's a great opportunity and great for Malaysian heritage.
Archaeologists are detectives of the past. Their meticulous fact-finding work and analysis with a multitude of scientists allow people a glimpse of previous lives and cultures other than their own. Who would have known that Lenggong Valley was the oldest habitation site in Malaysia, or that stone tool makers of Kota Tampan were skilled in tool-making technology? Who would have believed that Peninsular Malaysia was an important land bridge for man migrating from Africa to Australia? Who would have thought that the Perak man was physically challenged and was prehistorically the only skeleton with a rare disease? Who would have known that the people of Sabah were already involved in business 3,000 years ago, using the longest Neolithic trading route in the world? Malaysia has numerous sites that are waiting to be explored or revisited. Modern techniques, which are constantly developing, will provide more information to tell the human story. Today, Malaysia's own sons and daughters are stepping forward to embrace the challenge of unburying the past.